coffee, and then we say goodbye and shake hands. Okay?
Are you ready, John?
Okay, running.
I'm running too.
So in other words, you want to change. In other words, who gives you the right to change or to put a government in another country?
It shouldn't be us that puts together the new government. It should be the people of Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan, and those that have had to flee from Afghanistan. And I think that's the right way to do it. Now, can I say I've enjoyed very much doing this interview with you, and I think that whatever differences there are between us, it's important we carry on with this dialogue. Maybe one of the problems that arises out of all this is there's been insufficient dialogue between the Arab world and the West, between Islam and between people of other faiths. And I hope that we can establish a proper dialogue, and maybe that would be some good that could emerge out of the terrible events of the 11th of September.
Some personal questions, Mr. Blair, at the end. I know you have so many meetings and people are waiting outside. I've read, I think, in the Times that you read about Islam. What do you know about Islam?
Well, I do not in any shape or form pretend to be an expert, but I do read...
What do you read? What interests you?
I read the message of the Quran insofar as it can be translated, and I read about Islam, and I enjoy doing that. And I think there's, I've learned things about the Quran that I never knew before, and I think a lot of Christians would be interested. That's one of the reasons I say to you, it would be good if we, out of this, we had some more dialogue and some more faith. And the reason I have to leave you now is because I'm going to meet some religious leaders, both Muslim and Christian and Jewish, upstairs, and in order to discuss with them how we can bring the faiths closer together. So, shukran lal jazira.
What did you say in Arabic?
Shukran lal jazira.
Shukran jazira. Thank you very much.
Islam understands its earthly mission to be to extend the law of Allah over the world by force. Now, this is distinct from extending the religion by force. Muslims often indignantly deny that Islam was spread by the sword, as the old expression goes, and that anybody is ever forced to convert to Islam. Now, of course, forced conversions are a constant hallmark of Islamic history, but they are technically forbidden by Islamic law. Now, the idea in Islam is that Muslims must wage war to establish the hegemony of Islamic law. Not everybody will be forced to become Muslim, but the non-Muslims will be relegated to second-class status. They will not be able to live in the society as equals to the Muslims. And it is the responsibility of Muslims around the world to fight to institute that kind of society.
While we were in the mosque, the Prophet came out and said, "Let us go to the Jews." We went out till we reached Bait al-Madras. He said to them, "If you embrace Islam, you will be safe. You should know that the earth belongs to Allah and His Apostle, and I want to expel you from this land. So if anyone amongst you owns some property, he is permitted to sell it. Otherwise, you should know that the earth belongs to Allah and His Apostle."
The Muslims see the extension of jihad as a war liberating the infidels from their infidelity and a privilege for them to enter in the religion of Islam and to abandon their wrong belief. So jihad is seen as a favor which is given to the infidel population in order to change their ways and convert to the true religion, Islam.
It is not for a prophet that he should have prisoners of war and free them with ransom until he had made a great slaughter among his enemies in the land. You desire the good of this world, the money of ransom for freeing the captives, but Allah desires for you the hereafter, and Allah is Almighty, All-Wise.
In the Muslim thinking, in the Muslim Sharia, the way the world is depicted is in two houses. It's called Dar al-Islam or Dar al-Harb, the house of Islam or the house of war. So the whole world is under these two houses. If you're not a Muslim, you're under the house of war. Yet in the West, the apologists, Islamic apologists would say, no, that's not accurate. It is the house of peace and the house of Islam. And in fact, that's not accurate. If you look at the hadith and if you look at what comes from the highest jurisprudence in the Middle East, that's what is being taught.
يعني أنا لدي طفل
طيب
من الآن أعده للشهادة
طيب
إما شهادتي أنا أو هو
نعم
فأقول له أن الله عز وجل قد جعل هنالك جنة واسعة فيها ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب بشر. فهو بيسألني يعني إذا أنا عملت عملية وفجرت نفسي هل إلي يعني ربنا عز وجل بيعطيني اللي بدي إياه، بيعطيني سيارات، بيعطيني بارودة أطخ فيها، بيعطيني ألعاب. قلت له كل ما تطلب.
وهل هذا
أي
حصل؟
شيء تطلب وهذا فعلا حصل.
وهل حصل بينك وبين ابنك يعني؟
هذا فعلا حصل.
نعرف حقيقة لو نمسك الميكروفون مع بعض ودنا نعرف ما هي الإجابة الصحيحة لهذا الطفل عندما يسأل أين أبي أو أين أمي وقد قام كلاهما أو أحدهما في عملية استشهادية.
والله الإجابة باختصار لما استشهد سعيد ما حكينا إن هذا شهيد.
نعم.
ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون.
نعم.
وسكتنا الأولاد ولما أتت التلفزيون أظن أبو ظبي
نعم.
أو غيره قلنا لهم إحنا مستعدين نقدم أولادنا الأربعة.
نعم.
فطلع حار صغير قال وأنا ليش لا.
وأنا أتمنى أن أكون شهيدا في سبيل الله وأن أقتل عددا من اليهود والكفار الذين أشركوا بالله ورسوله واتبعوا دينا غير لم يشرعه الله ولم يذكر في القرآن الكريم.
نعم.
وأنا عمري 12 سنة.
ما شاء الله.
وأحفظ القرآن الكريم.
ما شاء الله. الله يحفظك ويجعلك مجاهد إن شاء الله في سبيل الله.
Now, the infidel population are seeing this war as a genocidal war, since as it is described in the Muslim historians of jihad, as well as extremely numerous Christian sources, this war was conducted as in great ferocity. Whole cities were given up to massacres. Entire populations were deported in slavery or massacred.
The companion of the Prophet and the second Caliph, Umar, sent the Muslims to the great countries to fight the pagans. When we reached the land of the enemy, the representative of Khosrau, Persia, came out with 40,000 warriors. And an interpreter got up saying, "Let one of you talk to me." Al-Mughira replied, "Our Prophet, the Messenger of our Lord, has ordered us to fight you till you worship Allah alone or give jizya, tribute. And our Prophet has informed us that our Lord says, 'Whoever amongst us is killed, martyred, shall go to paradise to lead such a luxurious life as he has never seen. And whoever amongst us remains alive shall become your master.'"
There have been, in fact, two big waves of jihad. The Arab waves, which started in the 7th century, and in the course of 1 century only, has Islamized a huge territory, mainly Christian territory, from Portugal till Armenia. But also Islamized Persia, which was not Christian, mainly Zoroastrian, except for Iraq, which was mainly Christian in the north and Jewish and Christian in the south. The second wave of Islamization started in the 11th century with the Turkish tribes. So all these regions of Eastern Europe, Greece, Anatolia, which is now Turkey, but was the seat of the Christian Byzantine Empire, and Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania were integrated into the Dar el-Islam, which is the land of Islam. So all the countries around the Mediterranean, which once have been Christian, became the Islamic Empire. This Turkish wave lasted from the 11th century till the 17th century, where the Turkish army were stopped at the gate of Vienna in 1683.
The Crusades are not understood in Muslim world today very differently to the way they are understood in the Western academia and in the discourse of the Western elite class. Both talk of the Crusades as an aggressive war of conquest by Christian Europe against peaceful, innocent Muslims. One may ask, however, what were those Muslims doing in the Holy Land in the first place? Well, what happened is that Muhammad and his successors waged a series of wars of conquest, and in one such onslaught, in the 4th decade of the 7th century, the Holy Land, Palestine, Israel, was conquered by Muslims. And so when Seljuk Turks started interfering with the ability of Christian pilgrims to go to the Holy Land, to go to Jerusalem, and when their physical safety was no longer guaranteed, the Western Christians acted not only as reconquerors of a land that had been once theirs, they also acted as, quite rightly one might say, protectors of their holy places. Now, a defensive war in the case of the Muslims is even a war of conquest, because they're obligated to spread Islam. But a land which had once been Muslim, in particular, must be reconquered, and the jihad is the rightful name of that war of reconquest. So they could never accept the Crusader states in Antiochia and Jerusalem, because they were Dar ul-Harb reinstated into Dar ul-Islam. And this is a contemporary aspect of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, of which many Westerners are not fully aware. Exactly the same psychology that prompted Saladin and others to fight the Crusaders is now motivating Hamas. In both cases, it is not only a matter of the nationalistic desire of Arabs to expel European or Jewish settlers, it is also the Quranic obligation of all good Muslims to make sure that the land once ruled by Muslims will be reverted to their rule.
From the British historian Hilaire Belloc's The Great Heresies, 1938. It has always seemed to me possible, and even probable, that there would be a resurrection of Islam, and that our sons or our grandsons would see the renewal of that tremendous struggle between the Christian culture and what has been for more than 1,000 years its greatest opponent. The suggestion that Islam may re-arise sounds fantastic, but this is only because men are always powerfully affected by the immediate past. One might say that they are blinded by it. But not so very long ago, less than 100 years before the Declaration of Independence, Vienna was almost taken, and only saved by the Christian army under the command of the King of Poland, on a date that ought to be among the most famous in history, September 11th, 1683.
On September 11, 1683, the siege of Vienna was broken. That was the high point of Islamic jihad expansion into Europe. After that, Islam went into decline, and the Islamic world was colonized and in a drastically weakened state. It seems very likely, almost certain as far as I'm concerned, that Osama bin Laden chose September 11th in 2001 to signal that the decline of the Islamic world was over, and that the jihadists were back and were going to pick up where they left off in Vienna in 1683.
If we look at the tectonic plates between Islamic world and non-Islamic world today, we notice something very interesting, that even very diverse Muslim societies, which cannot be easily branded under one civilizational label, have something in common, and it is the tendency to be in conflict with their neighbors. If we look at the extreme southeastern outreach of Islam, we see East Timor, where Indonesian Muslims slaughtered a third of the population of this former Portuguese colony, who are, by the way, Roman Catholics. In southern Philippines, we see an extremely violent Islamic rebellion, which has been simmering and becoming more or less violent for years. In Indonesia itself, we had religious conflict in the Spice Islands, where the beleaguered Christian minority is in danger of extinction. We have very active Islamic movements, both in Thailand and in China, in Xinjiang. In the Indian subcontinent, the history is tragic indeed. That's where the Holocaust, the Hindu Holocaust, took place in medieval times, a little-known episode in the history of Islam in the Western world, but the one that left a deep traumatic mark on the people of the region, and where the conflict is still latently present in the province of Kashmir. In Africa, there is the constant war in Sudan, which finally has gained some prominence in the Western decision-making circles, but which has been going on for 20 years. And it's impossible to estimate the number of lives it has claimed, but it certainly goes into many hundreds of thousands. There is the constant instability in Nigeria between the resurgent central and northern states, which are increasingly pressurizing the government in Lagos into accepting Sharia law as the law of the land in those provinces. And of course there is Mauritania, where Muslims constantly battle non-Muslim southerners. Then there is of course the Caucasus, Chechnya. And in Europe itself we have the conflict in the former Yugoslavia between the Bosnian Muslims and Serbs and Croats respectively, and the conflict between the Albanians and the Serbs, Albanians and the Macedonians, and quite possibly before too long, Albanians and Greeks. So if we eliminate these conflicts, if we eliminate from the equation Chechnya, the Balkans, Sudan, the world is a pretty peaceful place. If we eliminate from the terrorist equation, terrorist acts carried out by the Muslims over the past 5 years, we would come to realize that the war on terror is unnecessary because terror is not a very big problem.